today. Obviously, you can read about the blog post that we'll put at the bottom of the podcast for all the details on that. But I don't want to bang on too much. I want you to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, if that's okay, the beginning part of your childhood into career. If you give our listeners a bit of an idea about who you are and what you've done and what you're doing now, that would be cool.
So I guess you've introduced me as Mel Marshall, whatever, but my name's, I guess, I'm known by Mel. So I'm from a little town in Lincolnshire called Boston, obviously not the American version. And from a very young age, I wanted to swim. So my mum's got a physical disability called muscular dystrophy. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know at the time whether or not I had it. And so she'd heard on the radio that swimming was the only sport that exercised all the muscles. So she decided to get me into swimming. So from the age of 4, I was swimming. But wow. I was I loved all sports, you know. I loved football, I loved netball, I loved hockey, I loved every kind of sport. Yeah. And that was my dad's influence, really, because my dad was a big sports kind of guy, and we used to be pretty competitive in the household. He did what dads do, you know, like, you go in goal and I'll hit the ball at you. And no mercy sort of approach. But what's interesting about him was when I started beating him at things, he didn't want to play anymore.
Okay, sounds like me, actually. I'd be exactly like that. I'm going to be like that with my kids. So
absolutely. So, and then that's kind of how I got into it, really. And I was just swimming in the public pool, and there was a club that was swimming at the same time, and I was kind of thought I can beat them, and so I swam alongside them, and then I joined the club from there, really.
Was there anybody else in your family that did swim properly like that, or were you literally the
only one?
The only one?
Yeah, just me. I'm an only child, so
right.
My mum said that was enough. There was nobody else that really swam. My dad could swim a little bit, but he was more of a runner and a footballer.
And that was Boston. I worked in Boston for a little bit. I worked at where did I work? I worked at Downton. I don't know if you remember Downton. The store there. Yeah, I worked there for a bit in the warehouse. And then I did a bit of a not work experience job at the grammar school, like the girls' grammar school in the PE.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as part of my training for my qualification. I was there for a full year term. Yeah, so yeah.
You got out alive?
Well,
And you got out alive?
Well, it was a bit intimidating, to be honest. You know, a youngish kind of bloke in a school full of girls was quite stressful as it was, to be fair. But it was a good experience. Quite town, isn't it? It's quite nice. I suppose it's a place that I remember the cathedral thing being huge there, but you've been out there a long time. Did you move away when you were quite young, or?
I was there till I was 19, and I moved to university. So I went to Loughborough Uni, got a sports science degree there.
And then professionally by that? I mean, you're swimming, at a high level, I'm guessing, by that point.
Well, I was a really good junior. So I was actually, I won 4 gold medals at the European Youth Olympics when I was 13. I was a European junior medalist. And then I had that kind of plateau where I didn't really do much. Right. Qualified for my first senior international at 15 years of age. And I kind of just let it all go to my head a little bit.
Okay.
And then I went to Loughborough University just to visit a friend because I was playing a lot of football at the time. And I went to stay with her for a couple of days. And then I went to see the swimming program. I thought, if I really want to be good, then I need to move programs.
Yeah.
So at 19, I wasn't getting paid professionally at that point. You don't really get paid professionally in swimming, but I had, I think, about $2,000 in the bank, and it was like, right, you've got to make it work to try and get on lottery funding. And so I had a year to be able to survive on that money, and then I made it work, and I got on funding about 6 months later. So.
Was that whilst you were doing your degree, or was this a separate thing to that?
Yeah, so whilst I was doing my degree, I studied, and obviously back then you didn't have to pay to do your course.
No.
So I was studying as well as swimming, and I moved my course that I was doing at sixth form to the Loughborough College, and then I finished my course, which was like a BTEC national diploma.
Yeah.
I finished that there at the same time as I was swimming, and then my swimming kind of took off. So
what do you think it was that actually, I mean, you say it took off, but like, what do you think it was that was driving you to do it? Did you know you were good, but you just had to knuckle down? Or, I mean, did you think you were better at this than you were at football, for example, that you said you're playing, or what was it that pushed you?
I think the big thing that pushed me was I was good at it. So, but I kind of thought that whatever I decided to I had a baseline talent at a lot of things. I was decent at football, I was decent at hockey, I was decent at netball, and I was decent at swimming. And I think whatever I would have decided to do, my work ethic would have got me to a decent level. But
you think there's a lot of that? I mean, obviously you talk, I mean, I hear this a lot in people that we talk to. It's like, obviously some of the people that we kind of now are talking to are ex-Special Forces guys. There's Gary that's going to start doing some work with us on the resilience program as well. I think I've briefly talked to you about that before. And he said a lot of it is work ethic. A lot of it is, there's obviously a little bit of natural talent there, but it's so many people drop down and almost fail because they're not prepared to put the graft in to get to where they want to be. And do you think that's probably true? Obviously, I don't want to fast forward too much, but the job role you do now, that must be the same there. I should think the work ethic is huge, isn't it?
I think for me, and when I ever give a conference and you're asked to summarise what makes the difference between good to great, it's character and personality are different. So personality, me, I'm soft as anything. I will cry at the X Factor. I'll tuck my dog in at night with a fleecy blanket, and I'll cry at most adverts, the John Lewis one at Christmas. But my character, who I decide to be, who I make the choice to be, is formidable, is determined, is hardworking, is resilient, is resourceful, is flexible, is adaptable, is innovative. And they're all skills that you develop over time. And so
you learnt those skills, do you think, or did people teach you that, or is it just something that in your childhood you just did? I mean, when you say that character and personality thing, was that, sorry, I didn't mean to put in, but that character and personality thing, do you think that differed in childhood, or did you kind of just sort of naturally do that anyway? You almost had this two sides to you.
I think the sport that I grew up in brought out a lot of those character traits. Like, I was 11 years of age and I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I'm doing early morning training. When I'm 17, I'm driving an hour to the pool. I'm getting in at 5 o'clock and then coming back, and then I'm going to school all day, and then I'm like doing the same again at night time. So that work ethic, you kind of get that bred into you.
Yeah.
But, in sport, you have really big highs and you have really big lows, and you have a large amount of time with a sustained goal and performance and, completing a series of, disciplines to try and get you to be better. So you learn a lot of things through that. But, I learned a lot from disappointments, how you get yourself back up. And then when you get a bit older, you're doing it when you're in your 20s. Then you reflected on how you've done it in your 30s. And when you nearly get to your 40s, it's kind of like you start to own and understand some of the things that you've been involved in. So I think
that's what builds the character, isn't it? Like you say, the stressful times. It's not but again, we were chatting to the guy yesterday about the similar kind of thing, and what everything's going on at the moment in the world, and it's having that ability to just sort of dig down, isn't it? And if you've had experience of, like you say, going through hard times, people tend to then do better. But I mean, it's all down to that comfort zone thing. We've talked about that so much in the gym with people, and in one of the projects that we're doing separately to this, is people, I think, stay in their comfort zone all the time, but you only get growth by stepping out of that. And I think it's that fear of what's going to happen when they put themselves either up on a pedestal or when they try and do something that's new, isn't it? And I think a lot of people, that's the bit that puts them off. And it's kind of why I was intrigued into how you got into it, and then how you think you were separated from the other people. Why were you better? Do you think a lot of it was down to your character?
100%. I'm 5'6". I've got large ankles, and I was ridiculously strong. That was my big thing.
Yeah.
Like from a physicality point of view, but it's about your character. I was determined, and I was willing to work harder than anybody else, and I was willing to push myself to the absolute limit. It's interesting now, because when I do your class,
do you always got that, do you think, or do you consciously think that you used to sit there and think, right, I've got to do this? I mean, people listening are going to be interested in, well, how can they do that? I can only speak from myself, but I think you do have to go to those, not dark places, but to those places that are uncomfortable, that you're going to feel out of your depth, and you're going to feel like you're not as good as the people around you. And then that's when you have to, I think, until you're tested, I don't know, it's really hard to describe, but I do think speaking to people like yourself, it's like, it's just testament to you challenged yourself to do better, haven't you? I mean, I think as much as the competition was there as well, the big thing is that you rose above it because you were testing yourself constantly. if you were only ever comparing yourself to somebody else, I think that's what holds people back almost. They almost have to drive themselves, don't they?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of the actual separating you from your peers, if you like, when you were at university level, because I mean, you said then is that when you were getting your funding, you got that after what, sort of 6 months or so you managed to get. So that must have stepped you up to the next level, is that right?
Yeah, so you kind of get access to a lot more support services and the finance, so I wouldn't have to worry about my rent being paid or anything like that. But I think it's, if I look back at some of the times through sport, when I failed the most is when I've learned and grown the most. And I think people have just got to embrace the failure, submerge yourself in it, laugh about it, because that's where your biggest learning can sometimes take place, like you said. And I just think that, in 2004, I was ranked the fastest woman in the world. And I went into the Olympics Games and I absolutely crashed out and burned. But had I not gone through that experience, I never would have known what it is to lead somebody into the Olympics in Rio 12 years later.
Yeah.
And so your biggest growth sometimes comes from your biggest adversity. And I think the more that you can put adversity in your life and actually manipulate your own sense of doing that, the better. And also, sometimes it's not being too hard on yourself. It's little steps. Because I always say this to myself all the time. I get frustrated at myself because I'm like, oh, nothing big's happening. But it's actually, you've got to take pride in the little steps. Because like for me, I'll talk about when I came to your class. The first time I came, I haven't really done anything physical for years. As in, like, not properly with a routine or anything like that. And like, I'm quite comfortable at, going through the exercise and just getting it done. But it took a lot for me after being someone that can clean 85 kilos and can bench 75 kilos and can squat 140 kilos, whatever it was, pretty much near those numbers. And, plank with 60 kg on my back to just come in and try and be normal.
Yeah.
So I think it's the little steps and making sure that, the first step sometimes is pack your bag for the gym and get there.
I think that's massively important. Yeah. I mean, again, I think people are almost too worried about what other people are going to think. I think it goes down to ego and pride. I mean, to me, I think I find that quite an interesting. I was listening to something the other day. I mean, by Ant Middleton, actually, funnily enough, it was one of his podcast type things. And he talks about how often he gets sucked into his own ego, and he's got to remember that it should be about pride and not about what other people think. It's about what he does. And he openly admits that he has an issue with his ego. He's got a huge ego and he lets it rule his life too much. But I kind of quite like that about the fact that he kind of knows that's one of his biggest downfalls. Yeah. And at least he's starting to try and take steps. But I think for a lot of people, their ego stops them doing anything, doesn't it? It's that whole first step, like you say. It's that, will you pack the bag to come to the gym? Will you make that first email or that contact? Or, do you go and get the running shoes and start doing out your run walks outside? But yeah, I think it's a huge thing. And it's one of the projects that we started to play with like last year. And it's linked to this resilience program that we're doing. It's starting to get people to do things that are just slightly out of their comfort zone initially. Like you say, small baby steps. Get them used to doing stuff like having a cold shower and things like that. Things that they wouldn't normally choose to do will start to set that. I think it's almost a bit of a cascade. You then think, okay, well, I've done that. I mean, I think I've tried to do a 101-mile stand-up paddle trip twice now, non-stop. I mean, God, we're doing it again this year, provided that we can get this, was Corona thing out of the way. But, I mean, you just sit and think, you've got to do that because my pride now is going to want to do that. I want that to happen for me. I don't want it to happen for anybody else. But I think a lot of people just get kind of completely bogged down and they're doing it for something else, or they're worried about what other people are going to think. And I think it's a huge learning curve. Like you say, if you don't have failure, how do you grow? But I think too many people at the minute are too scared to have that initial what they think of as being failure when they're coming, isn't it? I mean, you think if you come to a class and you're absolutely blowing after 30 seconds, well, that's okay. That's what you're supposed to feel, isn't it? But a lot of people are worried that means that other people are going to think they're no good and whatever. But I mean, in terms of the swimming, sorry, I'll go off track a bit if I'm not careful on this. It can be a nightmare. So, I mean, other than the actual training, because obviously that's one thing I want to touch on quickly. You talked about 5 a.m, you're in the pool. I've known people in the past that have swam, and I've always sat there and thought, oh my God, I mean, can you just give the guys just a very quick outline of what a typical pro swimmer's training schedule, if you like, is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was actually more difficult when I was I was an international, but I was in a club program. So like I say, I used to live 45 minutes from the pool, and I would drive. I'd get up at 4:15 on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'd travel 45 minutes to hit the pool at 5 a.m. I'd probably swim 7,000 metres from 5 till 7. I would get out, then I'd do some gym from 7 till 8:30. Then I would smash it back to try and get to school, sixth form. And then I'd go to school from like 9 till 3:30, 4 o'clock. Then I'd go straight from school back to 45 minutes to the swimming pool again and do another 7,000 metres.
That's just crazy, isn't it?
I do that 10 times a week. Now it's a little bit more sophisticated in terms of like the time that they start, or, you know, we would start 7:30. We'd do some warm-up stuff. So even though we are a non-impact sport, we spend 30 minutes like priming and prepping the body. So shoulder health, knee health, all that sort of stuff. And then they would do 2 hours of swimming. Some of them who are endurance athletes would swim 7,000 metres, sprint athletes between 4,000 and 5,000. Then they would go in the gym, and they would do an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym from probably 9:30 till 11:30. Then they go back, rest, recover, and then they come back again. So 3:30 they would start their physical prep, and then in the water again from 4 till 6. And they're twice on a Monday, twice on a Tuesday, once on a Wednesday, twice on a Thursday, twice on a Friday, once on a Saturday. And then they get that kind of 48 hours off. And then they would, and swimming's pretty relentless. So you'd be doing 16 weeks of that. Then you'd have a couple of days extra off or a competition. And then you would do that 3 times a year. So it's
crazy.
They only get about 2 weeks off a year, really.
I mean, I did know somebody who tried out for the Olympic squad for, I forget, I think it was K1, Kayak 1. He was a single-sided kayaker. And I worked with him, and I worked for Loughborough Leisure Centre. I remember him going, and it was just like you say, it's relentless. For pro athlete level, I mean, he got through to the final sort of stage, if you like. But I mean, his job for a while was athlete. And you just think it was eat, recover, train, eat, recover, train. That's it. Nothing else goes on, does it? And that dedication is huge. I mean, how long were you in that in that window for? What sort of terms of years? I mean, I know you said you started swimming at a very young age. I mean, how long would you say you were in that very, very intense training sort of stages for? How many years?
Probably 11, 12 years at the top level. So,
crazy.
Yeah.
And then for people that don't know, obviously, I mean, you went on to do, I mean, I think I'll be dead honest, right? I'm not a sport person at all. I had no idea who you were when you came into the gym. So you had never got to worry about that thing you said about, do I know what this is? I've got no idea. And I think that for me, it's like people need to understand, don't they, that it's like years and years and years of actual proper training and sacrifice and everything else. And yet for most people, it's just general health. All they've got to do is come to a gym 3 times a week, probably something like that. So yeah, I just find it fascinating. I think it's really interesting that you've put yourself through that, and then you've gone on to get to Olympic level. And then you mentioned you were the fastest woman on the planet for your distance. And what distance was that again at that time?
It was 200 freestyle. So in the Olympic year, I swam the fastest time in the world that year, and that time was still the fastest time in the world that year after the Olympics. Okay. So the Olympics was won in a slower time than I'd done that year, which was pretty heartbreaking.
I mean, what do you think it was that meant you didn't do as well in the competition? Do you think that was the way you trained, or do you think it was circumstances, or were you injured, or because obviously people...
3 things really. One, I had quite a lot of pressure put on me I had quite a young coach, and I had a pretty stressful performance director at the time, so there was quite a lot of pressure coming from them. I think physically I was a little bit overcooked. So probably tried a bit too hard. And then the biggest thing was I've always been laced with significant self-doubts. So I've always, I felt like I'd fought my way to the top, and that was my driver, to prove everybody wrong. Yeah. And then when I needed to have belief that I was good enough, and that was the thing I needed, I never really had belief in myself. So when I was fighting, I was like...
that top score, because you'd already got that fastest time. You think perhaps that was almost, okay.
Am I good enough?
Yeah, now what is it?
Yeah, because that's the thing, like, I was a fighter, and like, I've always been like, someone says no, I've been like, absolutely yes.
Yeah, you've battled for it.
But when it gets to the place whereby you have to have self-belief and not anger and kind of, you know, like a bull in a china shop, that was the place that I struggled at, because I'd never really spent time looking at what am I good at. I'd actually just spent time going, I'm going to prove you lot wrong.
Yeah, I can do this. Because you prove to other people. And I guess back then there wasn't anywhere near so much information available, was there, for that kind of thing? I mean, the self-belief and the psychology of sport now is massive, isn't it? Whereas back 2004, 15, 16 years ago, it would have been, practically non-existent. I mean, do you remember doing anything like that with your coaches at the time?
It's interesting because I worked with a sports psych after Athens, and when I arrived in Beijing, and I remember walking out, for the swim that I probably thought was going to be my last swim, I remember thinking, if only I knew now if only in Athens I knew what I knew now, and I had the physical opportunity that I had in Athens, I would definitely be Olympic champion. But I just learned it all too late. Yeah. And ultimately, I just didn't believe in myself enough. No way.
And then did you do a lot of work on that afterwards? Was that something that you instantly recognised was something that you wanted to try and work on, or did it just?
I think that's why I went into coaching, because I wanted to believe in athletes the way I hadn't believed in myself.
Okay.
And, lo and behold, I think that's one of the best traits I've got as a coach is, I absolutely, if I'm with somebody, I 100% believe in what they are capable of doing. And I don't see any limits, and I don't see any kind of, I don't see any boundaries. It is what you make it.
And I think now for people that perhaps don't know the next chapter to this, really, you're now, what's your job role, your technical job role now is?
So my official title is I'm the lead coach for the National Centre of Performance in British Swimming. Okay. There's two national centres, which is where the best of the best go. One in Bath and one in Loughborough, and I head up the one in Loughborough.
Okay. And then you're in charge of what, Team GB swimming effectively in terms of their coaching?
Yeah, so I have an intimate group of 8 athletes, and then I oversee 19 in that programme. Okay. So yeah, that's my role. And
you obviously look after the Olympic champions as well. Yeah. So obviously, Adam. I mean, I don't want to make it really. Sorry. I mean, it's more. I mean, I'm kind of interested how you're using your experience to then become so good as a coach. I mean, you talked about that self-belief. Do you think that was the big thing for you? You wanted to really take the natural talent, the work ethic, but then layer on how to get that self-belief up. Do you think that was the big thing?
I think I get asked this quite a lot, because I've coached Adam since he was little. So I've coached him since he was 14. So we've been working together for nearly 12 years. Mm-hmm. And the big thing, my reason why I came into coaching was I'd learned so much as an athlete, been to the front line of sport as such. And I felt like if I didn't share that with athletes and help them shine, then I was doing a disservice to the sport. That was one of the reasons why. And I think, your job as a coach is, of course, there's a technical element, but ultimately you're a belief partner. Yeah. And, when I look at the Adam story, the only thing, there's lots of things that brought that to life, don't get me wrong, but one of the underpinning things that brought that to life was belief. I 110% believed that he could win the Olympics, even when he was 15. Okay. And I was probably naive at the time, but that naivety led us on a journey to this level, and then we moved it on to an even higher level. And, I remember people saying, oh, that's not possible in the program that you're in, because I was only in a small program at the time when I started on that journey with him. Yeah. And I was like, again, the little warrior in me comes out.
You like a junior coach at that level, I imagine, were you? Well, I don't know if there's such a thing as a junior coach, but were you like a...
So I was like a head coach in a club program, but my top squad was like 12-year-olds to 16-year-olds, basically. Okay. And he was a swimmer that, I actually recruited him. But he was a swimmer that I was in my group. And so, it's just belief.
And what do you think, I mean, again, I don't just mean, not just him here, but what do you see? Because you must see a lot of people coming through that are probably very good swimmers, but what is it you mentioned earlier on, personality and character, that kind of stuff, that obviously plays a part. But I mean, can you help people to develop things? Like what not tips and tricks, but I mean, for people listening, how do you improve that mental side to a person? But how do you think you've managed to do that in the past?
I think first, it's different because I call it front leadership, side leadership, and back leadership. When you're coaching a group of kids, 12 to 16, you're very influential, and you can really be quite autocratic in the way you deliver your messages. You can put them into environments whereby it's challenging and they have to grow through that experience.
Yeah.
But I guess when you're dealing with adults, it's very much like you have to suggest first of all, you have to get buy-in. So you have to create that platform. Like, so with Adam, I'll say, do you want me to take you somewhere you ain't ever been before? And invite that challenge. And if he says yes, I said, how far do you want to go?
How far down the rabbit hole, I often joke in the classes, do you want to go? I can take you all the way to 1,000 burpees if you want. Yeah, that's similar.
But once you've invited that challenge, and you as a coach, it allows you to, take them to a territory that they're not, that keen on going.
Yeah.
So I think that's the art of it, really. But I guess the tips is understanding the individuals. So some people need, this is how we're going. Some people need what do you think? Some people need a little baby step. Some people need to see a plan. Some people need to see a discipline. Some people need to see, relaxed way of doing things. It's about knowing that individual and also helping them know themselves.
Yeah.
There's 7 billion people on the planet and only one you. So they've got to know themselves. Like, I know that if I haven't got any structure and someone's not telling me, I can be a bit lazy on it. But also if someone tells me too much, I'll tell them to naff off.
Yeah.
So it's a real balance.
It's getting that balance with a lot of people. I think as a coach myself, you see that a lot. I mean, I'm very kind of I wouldn't say shouty, but I'm definitely at the sort of strict end. I was trained by ex-Marine PTIs and that kind of stuff. So that's where I cut my teeth on circuit. So I used to get looked at. If you give that look to the trainer as if to say, oh, I'm tired, and they just look at you and just look through you, and I quite like that. I actually relished that a little bit. I was very unfit as a kid. So for me, I didn't get that bug and that challenge till a lot later on. I think I was probably late 20s really before I started putting my toe in the water of fitness. So yeah, I kind of get that because I'd have been exactly the same. I think if somebody had told me that before I was ready to accept it, then I'd have just kicked back, and I used to smoke and I drank and I was in a bit of a messy place. So yeah, I get what you're saying with that. You've got to get that fine line between pushing somebody too much and then bringing them on gradually. I mean, I'm a big fan. I mean, there's a guy I know in America called Steve Feaster. He's I think he's a coach. He's somebody I've known for a long time. And he did the fit to fat to fit challenge. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where they had the coaches that were like, incredibly good shape, very fit people. And they would actually purposely gain the amount of weight which their client wanted to lose over the course of 4 months.
Really?
Come back, and then they both lose that weight together. It was almost, I think it was a TV type thing, but and he was amazing because you saw him. She put him through the session that he first put her through. After 4 months of non-training, and he was in bits. And he said it was at that point that he realised how hard he pushed people. And he said he realised immediately then that that wasn't for everybody because so many people would have found it too tough. And I guess even if you've got Olympic athletes, it's still going to be at the right time to push them, hasn't it? Otherwise you'll break them. Otherwise you'll switch them off mentally and then they won't want to do it anymore. So I reckon that must be one of the biggest traits that you've got that works, your ability to be able to read people's situation. Do you say that's right, do you think?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, no one likes to hurt themselves for no progress.
No.
It's one of the basic things. No one wants to walk around with DOMs all day and then not be able to do anything the day after. It's really demotivating. So I just think it's that individual, the read on the situation. And also the biggest word that I would probably use is trust. The reason why those people got on with those people that had put the weight on was because they trusted that person then could understand what it felt like for them.
Yeah.
I think if you can get in that place whereby you show that empathy or at least ask the questions that are needed to be heard. And so you can't, of course you run sessions and coaching, you have to take a lead sometimes, but you need to know where people are at and what it is that they're going through. Like, so if someone coached me now, if they just, I quite like discipline and I can like being pushed, but if people didn't know where I'd come from and weren't helping me on the first steps, I'd be like that. Well, and like, if you look at me, if someone actually wanted to put me in, get me in shape now, I could get in pretty good shape pretty quick.
Yeah.
But until someone unlocks me and goes, shit, what was it like to be that good at that? And now you're miles away.
Yeah.
It's like, so I guess it's that unlocking that individual DNA.
Yeah, I think that's a lot. You see that a lot in people in the classes and one-to-one with clients, and it's just learning, I think, how to get the best out of somebody, isn't it? I think it's quite a hard thing to do. But yeah, I just think for people that are kind of on the other end of that, they need to be upfront, don't they, about what switches them on and what switches them off, and talk to coaches. And because a long time they'll just put up with it, thinking it's the right thing to do. And there's probably a million ways to get fit. Okay, perhaps not a million, but there's a lot of ways to do it. And I think that whole like sort of square peg round hole type thing is really common at the moment, especially with Instagram. It's like, you must try this, you must try that, you must do the other. And I think sometimes as a coach you can get caught up in too much complexity and just trying to find the thing that person enjoys or is at least willing to endure. Really is that first step on the ladder, isn't it? And I think for a lot of people that's where they get their confidence. Once you've got your confidence, like you say, I mean, once you've started something, you enjoy it, you'll then push yourself. It's just getting that little bit of ignition, isn't it? I think that's the key bit to it. So anyway, we'll go off topic here. So obviously this coronavirus stuff, I know that we spoke about it very briefly online. How's that affected you now at the moment? Obviously everything's gone into stall, hasn't it, really, for the time being?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been quite a challenge because I feel guilty for feeling down about it, because obviously we're not like it is in the First World War. We're not, rationing ourselves. We're staying at home. But for me, like, as somebody that's striving for progress every single day, that's trying to push and trying to find opportunities and trying to move things on at a quick pace, it's been really quite, it's been sad.
Yeah, but I guess all the guys have done so much prep, haven't they? Because up until recently, what were you going for? What was it, tryouts for something in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, our Olympic trials are in like a week's time, and we got closed down as a programme about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay.
And the big thing was that we've spent the last year, this is our Olympic year, we spent the last year, putting those training blocks on to have this first showcase, effectively next week. And I mean, for the guys, they've been brilliant. They've been so resilient, because I
imagine it pushed them, didn't it?
Yeah, but I think some of them are quite young, so they think actually another year's time would be even better.
Okay.
But they're not going to get that performance that they've been working so hard to get. It's like you've done all the dress rehearsals and you don't get to go to the show. So
it's so close as well, wasn't it? I mean, literally a couple of weeks away. It's been. I mean, and it kind of come out of the blue, didn't it? Really. I mean, you couldn't have known much more from about a couple of months back, could you? Really, maximum. I mean, even looking then, you don't think it's ever going to get to the stage that it has now. How have you helped them cope, or do you think they've just coped themselves?
I think it's about being one step ahead. Like, so if you can plant the seed and let them grow it themselves. So I could see this coming. And so I just talked about the positive straight away. So I talked about, well, actually, yes, it's disappointing we're not going to get this, but another year's time, for you it's better, for you it's better. And just I sold the opportunities. And the biggest one that I said, and I think this is the one that's probably stuck with most people, is for us in our sport, you never ever get to run your best year twice. Because you take a bit of a slow after the Olympics, and then you build up to the next 4 years. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to take a bit of a break, but we get to run our best year twice. And I'm like, and better, because we'll know what we thought didn't work, and we know what did work, and we'll get to absolutely blow the house down with it. So I got excited about what could be. Yeah,
what's going to be next year, effectively, then, provided everything plan for that. So, and they're all happy with that, other than the fact that they can't train. I imagine that must be a huge shock to the system for a lot of them. I imagine it's probably one of the longest breaks from training for quite a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think the boredom's setting in a bit now. But I think we gave them a break, really. Just said, look, take a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks off, but stay healthy, stay exercising.
And are you guys giving them stuff to do at home? Because obviously I know that they're having to stay in. So or are you just letting them do their own sort of fitness programs at home?
No, so we've given them some prescription, but we'll start an online sort of more prescriptive process on the 13th of April. So we'll move from what is like a flexible program to we meet on this chat at this time, and we do this run, and we do this kind of shoulder health stuff and trunk health and all that sort of stuff. So the big thing for us is making sure, because obviously we've got no access to physio, so we've got to because you can't see them. So we've got to make sure that when we get that introductory 3 weeks that, we are taking care of their shoulder health, their knee health, all the stability stuff, accessory muscles, all those kind of things are being really taken care of. We're not just jumping into those kind of global
So I imagine that these people, and you would have been yourself. I mean, I've often heard the phrase, athletes are like a pointy stick, as in they're just sharpened and sharpened and sharpened to this incredibly focused place. But the downside to that is that it's very easy to knock it and then get injuries and get knocked off, and that end of that pointy stick gets dented quite easily. But I mean, and I guess all this prehab stuff that you would normally be doing hands-on, I mean, I imagine they're foam roller in, they're doing all the things which they should be doing, and you're just hammering that in, are you initially? Is that what you...
Yeah, well, they're pretty responsible and independent. We've obviously, we run those programs all the time, like we're doing an hour a day on that.
Yeah.
So they've got their own individualized programs that they know that they need to do. So, and if they've got red markers whereby, they might have had not a tear, but they've got like a weak left side on their groin.
Problems, yeah.
Yeah, so they're pretty good on that. And throughout this period where they're off, they're still doing that. So they'll still be taking care of themselves from a shoulder health, from a knee health, from a hip health, from a trunk health point of view. So they don't...
imagine that, like you say, you've obviously seen this coming. So, well, you saw it coming earlier. And I just think so much of that's a mindset thing for you as well, isn't it? You could have sat there and just gone, oh, well, that's it. Chuck it up in the air with all this hard work. But I think that shows a lot about you as a coach to be able to sit there and think, no, you need to flip that so that you've seen the positive, even though you must be disappointed. It's a normal reaction, isn't it? Everybody must be. But I think that they need to see that you're positive on it. And I think that helps, again, doesn't it? It's how you've reacted to the situation.
Yeah, they are what you lead. If I swear a lot, they'll swear a lot. If I'm positive, they'll be more positive.
I'm glad you're not swearing too much today, Mel, because otherwise I'd be joining in with you as well. But yeah, I just think, like you say, I think that is down to you showing that positivity rather than sitting there and just burying your head in your hands and saying, oh my God, I think we joked just off camera earlier on how this is quite tough for us as a business at the moment. And I go through days where I think, it's all good, it's all positive. And then the next day you get a couple of emails and think, oh my God, how are we going to get through this? But I'm a massive fan you can't control what you're dealt. You can't control the cards that come to you, but you can control how you play the game. I think it's entirely up to you. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed when I've talked to high performing people from all backgrounds, special forces, athletes. I don't know if you noticed that we had a girl called Kaz who rode the Pacific and set couple of Olympic records. It's all that, sorry, not Olympic, but world records. It always boils down to that ability to how you see a situation or how you deal with that situation, isn't it? I think it's very easy just to go into that negative mindset and get bogged down. But where you've obviously shined before and where these guys shine is that they're able to kind of still see a positive at the end of it.
The thing is, you can deal with it or you can react to it, and the best thing is to deal with it.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's about that you can only control your controllables. And it's about, so for this process for me, I know from a professional point of view, perhaps not a personal point of view, but from a professional point of view, this is unprecedented time for me, as in I'm actually going to get 3 weeks to write on my flip chart and to write all over my walls and have a really creative space to come up with even better plans for them all.
Yeah.
And so that's time that I've never ever had, where you're not always on the back foot with it because it's moved so fast from year to year. Now I'm actually getting the space to be an even better coach.
Get a bit more creative with what you're doing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for us, again, as a business, obviously we're a gym and, obviously it's footfall. It's a physical thing. People come to your business to come and exercise and train. And it's that literally has never been, again, it's unprecedented. How would you have a gym and yet not have people come in the building? It's a very strange situation. And I think for us, it's just making us realise that you can do a lot on these sort of Zoom. But those people listening to this, it's only the podcast, but we're having a meeting over a Zoom network little thing, and we've started now doing classes. And I think it's really opened our eyes to what actually is going to be the next step in fitness training. There's now no reason why you can't get to the gym. We can almost come to you, So I think it's how you deal with the situation, isn't it? Like you say, you either just kind of sit there, head in your hands, just write it all off, or we're trying to get people keeping on top of their training by still bugging them, but they're doing it in their houses. And going forward, once we get through this, we're going to keep these Zoom stuff going because we've found that it just works well for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it gives them another tool to the box. So yeah, I think it's very much how you see the situation. But I mean, yeah, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It's been really interesting talk. I could go on and on and on and on. But I mean, I think as a takeaway thing for people that you would, who are struggling with their training, or would you say kind of looking for a little bit more motivation things, is there anything that you can kind of sort of sum up how you've dug down into that? You said it's your character and it's your resilience, but were there things that you've picked up over the years that you could kind of sum up to give those people a bit of, okay, well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to give that a go, or not? You might not. I mean, I don't know.
I think I said it earlier, really, it's the little steps. Take the little steps as well, and just have pride and have satisfaction in the little steps. Like I say, sometimes it's packing the bag and then it's getting in the car, or it's getting online, or whatever it might be. And I think the big thing is just do it. Yeah. Sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking about yay or nay, or talking us out. Just do it. Just send yourself in and just do it. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I mean, let's say we deliberate too much, don't we? The amount of times that you can sit there training through YouTube looking for the right workout, when if you just got something done and did it, you'd be done and dusted in 15 minutes, wouldn't you? I agree with that massively. I think I can be like that. We can procrastinate too much over things, can't we? But okay, well, it's cool. Well, thank you very much for talking. That's been great, really interesting. Hopefully the listeners have, all three of them will have actually found something of interest on that. You never know, we might get a few more than that. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, Mel. All the best for the squad as well. Hopefully it all goes, it all gets sorted out, and all these new ideas you put into place with your flip charts and your writing on the wall will work well. All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us.